Hello to everyone, and welcome to this Academy session where we're going to introduce you to the newly launched tool that is the SDG Action Manager. I am your host today. I'm Laura Palmeiro, and I am a senior advisor to the UN Global Compact. I will be presenting today with Dan Osuski, who is Director for Standards at B-Lab, and with Jessica Yoganadam from Danone, who is in charge of sustainability reporting. So today you will be using during the session the features of Q&A that you have on your screen, on the bottom of your screen, as well as the chats. During the presentation, you're more than welcome to start putting your questions and sending them to us, just because after the presentation, we're going to have around 30 minutes of Q&A. So you can start whenever you want during the presentation using this feature. We're also using a polling system that we will begin with immediately in order to see what is your objectives and what is that you hope to learn during the session today. So please, if we start with the poll. So, which statement best describes your motivation for participating in today's session? I would like to understand how my company can better contribute to the SDGs. I would like to understand how to integrate the SDGs into my business strategy and operations. I want to understand how to better integrate our SDG activities into our external communication with stakeholders. I would like to integrate ownership and support for the SDGs across the rest of my organization. And I think that my company is doing a good job with our SDG activities to date, but I'm interested in learning from the experience of others in the spirit of improvement. So please, just if you would like to choose what is the objective that best describes your motivation today to join the session, that would be great, because we will see immediately the results that we get from this poll. We will give you a few seconds to do this. Okay, we can see the results of the poll. We have almost half of the people saying that I would like to understand how to integrate the SDGs into my business strategy and operations, which is a great result, because we always talk about the integration of sustainability topics in the overall strategy of the company, not having just one sustainability strategy and one business strategy. So it is great that these are the results. And in any case, we're going to cover all the topics in our today's presentation. So what we will cover today? What is the SDG Action Manager? We will have an interactive demo showing the key features and the benefits of the tool that will be done by Dan. And then we will have a spotlight through Jessica Yoganadam presenting how Danone is planning to use the tool. And then we will have plenty of time for Q&A. So what is the SDG Action Manager? The world, as we know, is not on track to achieve the global goals. I'm pretty sure that you are all aware that today no country is currently on track to achieve the different goals that they have set for themselves for 2030. Also, a UN report showed the world is now headed toward 3.9 degrees temperature rise instead of the 1.5 that we need to achieve in order to avoid the worst impact on climate change. Also, we know that we must halve the emissions by 2030 to avoid some of the worst outcomes. So what is interesting to see is that we have inputs from the CEOs that say in 2016 that opportunities, there were many opportunities to contribute for the global goals through their core business. But in 2019, only 48% of companies say that they are implementing sustainability into their operations. Similarly, 49% of CEOs said in 2016 that business would be the most important actor in the delivery of the global goals. But only 21% of CEOs feel that business is currently actually playing a critical role in contributing to the global goals. So we decided to collaborate together, the Global Compact and B-Lab, with a shared mission, which is to use business as a force for good. So what the Global Compact has as main features: we have a global outreach, we have content expertise, we have the 10 principles and the SDGs as part of our mission. And we are hosted at the UN. It is a UN initiative. So that is why we are so much embedded with the SDGs, which is the agenda for the UN. B-Lab, on their side, they brought to the table sustainability assessment and content expertise for many, many years, and a very powerful technical platform, the B Impact Assessment with the B Analytics. The SDG Action Manager is a web-based impact management solution that enables businesses to take action on the Sustainable Development Goals through 2030. The SDG Action Manager brings together B-Lab's impact assessment, the 10 principles of the Global Compact, and the Sustainable Development Goals, thus enabling meaningful business action through dynamic self-assessment, benchmarking, and improvement. It has been recently launched at the end of January, and it is available in English, French, Italian, Portuguese, and Spanish. There are 5 main features of this tool that we will see later live. So first of all, find your starting point. You can learn which are the SDGs that matter most based on your company profile that you have to fill in at the very beginning of the tool, and how to take action today. We will see that this, of course, does not, I would say, replace materiality assessment, but we have introduced this feature because we think that there is enough evidence that for certain industries, we can have certain SDGs that are, I would say, a totally must-have. And we have based this feature on the analysis done by WBA, the World Benchmarking Alliance, that has made a mapping of the different industries and which are the SDGs that are most material per industry. Then, understand and share your impact. This is in order to get a clear view on how the operation, supply chain, business model create positive impact, and also identify the risk areas for each of the SDGs. Then set goals and track improvement. We have 10 years to achieve the SDGs. We need to stay motivated and visualize the progress on the dashboard. So you will see that there is a specific feature in order to set goals at different time frames. Then collaborate across your company. You can very easily invite colleagues to join the SDG Action Manager and to contribute, each of them to contribute with their expertise and see the real-time progress in the tool. And of course, learn on every step. You can determine high impact action based on actionable assessment questions, benchmarks, and improvement guides. And you will see that also there is a feature that relates to connecting each of the questions with all the materials that we have in the smart library of the UN Global Compact just by clicking on a specific button. So now, with no further ado, I will introduce Dan Osuski, who is going to do the live demo of the SDG Action Manager. Thank you, Dan.
So by way of background, as Laura mentioned, whenever a user registers for the SDG Action Manager, they answer a few simple profile questions that essentially loads the appropriate content within the SDG Action Manager for your company. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to walk you through a demo of the platform as if you've already registered. And I'm going to walk us through an example for a manufacturing company that is based in the United States and is of an employee base of between 250 employees and 1,000. Most importantly, to the features that Laura mentioned, it has been designed within the tool. The whole SDG Action Manager takes what we refer to as a module approach, in which the content is organized and compartmentalized by different topic areas, primarily based on the SDGs. However, all companies actually start with what we refer to as the baseline module, which is intended to provide a comprehensive starting point for all businesses that's rooted in the 10 principles of the United Nations Global Compact. As Laura also mentioned, for identifying starting points, the platform also provides a series of initial recommendations of what other modules are most relevant to a particular company based on the industry and sector that they're based in. And that is based on the research of the World Benchmarking Alliance. And so you can see here on the homepage of your SDG Action Manager, once you've registered and you're using it, the breakdown of the modules throughout the entire homepage, beginning with the baseline, those recommended modules, and then all remaining modules after that. Once you're ready to go and get in, you can begin with that baseline module. I've already gone ahead and completed the baseline, and that's so we can quickly maneuver between different modules. Everyone begins with that baseline, and in order to maintain the fact that everyone starts with a comprehensive assessment, it's actually required to go through that baseline before the other modules are unlocked. I'm going to walk us through the baseline module, and then I'm going to navigate us over to one of the recommended SDGs for the particular company that I'm operating in. But you can see here within each module, there's further breakdowns of topic areas. And so within the baseline, you'll actually start with a general introduction that's largely oriented around the Sustainable Development Goals and some general questions, before then also seeing a series of questions that are organized by the structure of the UNGC 10 principles. And so you can see each of the principles in the introduction of each of the individual questions, and then you're able to navigate directly into individual questions to identify what are essentially the best practices related to these topics, to both identify opportunities to continue to learn and improve, as well as to assess your performance as you go. I'm going to now move us over to one of the particular SDG modules. And so once you've completed your baseline, and now you have a series of these recommended SDGs, in this case for my particular company, that there are two that have been recommended: good health and well-being, and responsible consumption and production. And when I enter into one of these modules, you'll see a consistent structure throughout each of the SDGs that are oriented around the different parts of the company's business that can actually drive contributions to all of the SDGs. And so it begins with a series of questions related to how a company's business model might be oriented towards positively contributing to them. Then moves on to how a company's internal operations is being managed to both mitigate risks to that SDG, but also create opportunities to contribute onto the company's supply chain, specifically as a key area of frequent opportunity for engagement around the SDGs. Onto collective action, which is intended to be reflective of some of the broader efforts that a company can undertake in their efforts to contribute. And then finally, the risk level of a company. And the intent of this section is to actually do something quite different, and rather than assess best practices, to give the company an opportunity to reflect on what might be some practices or aspects of their business that is a good indicator of potential areas where they might be inhibiting achievement of those SDGs. And so there's some overlap with the content in the rest of the assessment of the modules, but it's intended to also give that sort of prioritization of where there might be key risks as you go through these tools. I'd like to navigate into a specific question now and show you some of the resources within it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move us over to what we refer to as the performance report, where you can see a more visualized breakdown of how a company is performing. And so I'm going to focus on a question within the internal operations section and take us to a question around how a company's products might be designed with environmental considerations specifically in mind. And so this is a particular question that obviously has been mapped and linked to SDG 12. And again, for this particular demo that we're sharing, this is designed for a manufacturing company. And so this question might not necessarily show up for a service company, for instance, because this is oriented around a company who is actually manufacturing physical products. But you can see here what the intent of the question is to do is not only identify what are the best practices for an individual company, but how to evaluate a company's performance in relation to those best practices. And so you're able to review the question, take a look at the individual answer options that are reflective of those best practices, and identify what are the things that the company is already doing. You can see the points available at the bottom here indicating an overall value of a question. And as you actually change your answer options and save your answers, you're able to see points being earned at the bottom here for each of the things that you are doing. That all aggregates up to your overall performance on a module. But most importantly, it's intended to give you the opportunity to reflect on what are those best practices that you're doing and what are the best practices that you can actually consider adopting to improve and find those opportunities that everyone on the call has been interested in the future. For each individual question, you can click on the Learn More button to access a variety of resources to both help you answer these questions and identify those improvements. And so it begins with a series of just explanations and instructions to help companies better understand some of the terminology that might be used in individual questions, as well as to provide access to what are the specific SDG targets that any of these questions have been actually mapped to. And you can see here, because the SDGs are so cross-cutting, even if a question is existing in one particular module, you can also see linkages to other SDGs and other targets across them as well. Laura also mentioned the access to the UN Global Compact's incredible and extensive smart resource library. And so for each of the resources that have been developed in that library, when it's been associated with a particular question in the Action Manager, you can directly access those resources to identify how to improve within this platform as well. Over time, our intent is to also feature specific examples of best practices that companies themselves are undertaking. And so as you use the tool, we actually encourage users to submit those best practices so we can consider featuring them within the platform in the future. And that's actually through this feedback mechanism in which you can not only provide input as to how we can continue to improve these questions, but also, like I mentioned, include additional resources or particular best practices that you would like to yourself share to this living platform. All of this is intended to create an opportunity for learning and education on the part of a company, as well as to help a company track their performance over time. And that happens not only through seeing the individual best practices in the questions and the resources, as well as the potential score that a user gets to access as they complete the modules, but it also creates the opportunity to actually set goals within the platform itself. And so for this particular question, if you mark the star option, you're going to see a goal page pop up in which you see not only your current performance, so your current answers on a question, but you can also indicate what are some of the things that you specifically would like to do related to this topic over time. And so as a manufacturer, I'm recognizing that there are a lot of opportunities for me to think about what it is that I can be doing with my products around design for the environment and therefore contributing to SDG 12. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark actually improving transparency about resource content on my items to help enable recycling. And I'm going to spend some time thinking about how there could be mechanisms for take-back programs for my products to try to enable reuse and a more circular economy with them. And so in addition to just marking those questions, I can then add notes, including who is going to be the project lead and any other useful information that could be useful for us to track as an organization, how we're going to address this over time. You can also go down and actually indicate what you see as potential deadlines or goals in which you'd like to achieve some of these practices. And so we can set a 6-month indicator, and then we can also opt in to receive email reminders for the goal itself, so you can continue to hold yourself accountable as well. And then once I save that, you'll see that the goal here is marked as highlighted, so you can always see that that's a goal that you've set. You can also access specific reports in which you're able to identify, to see all of the goals that your company has set and focus specifically on those areas of improvement. You can see that at the improvement report option right here below the reports tab. I'm not going to navigate us to there now because we've only just set one goal at this stage, but I am going to navigate us over to the SDG performance report as a way to conclude before handing things over back to Laura to share the visualizations of what this all looks like. And so my company has now completed a portion of the baseline metric set as well as this SDG 12 module. And so within each of these, you can see not only your overall performance on that module as a whole, but also a breakdown of your performance on the subtopic areas that are featured in each of these modules. Importantly, one thing that I'd like to acknowledge as a key resource that we know users are really interested in and that we're really excited to provide is not only the ability to have a company evaluate and assess their performance against all of these questions that are featured, but also to actually enable benchmarking against other users of the tool. And so importantly, we acknowledge, given the fact that the SDGs are so broad and comprehensive, and there's many different ways for companies to contribute to them, high performance on these modules might actually be nowhere near a range of scoring the full possible credit on all of these questions. So that's not something to fret about. It's just instead intended to acknowledge that there are many different ways that companies can be contributing, and there are many different best practices that they can adopt. And once we've had enough time and an increase in our users, what we'll also be able to do within these platforms is actually share benchmarking data, so you can see not only where you're performing on any of these individual areas, but you can see how that might compare to other user types anonymously, of course. So you can see if you're performing better or worse than what you might be considered as your peers. And the intent there is to not only help you understand your overall performance, but ideally identify what might be key priority areas and real opportunities for you to continue to improve your own performance over time. And so I'm seeing that there are a lot of questions here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hand things back over to Laura to give Jessica the opportunity to talk a little bit about how Danone is using this, and then when we turn things back over to a Q&A, we'll be able to address some of the questions that we've seen come in.
Great. Thank you, Dan, for the great demo. And now I would like to invite Jessica Yoganadam from Danone to tell us her experience as far as the tool itself is and how you're using it in your organization. Over to you, Jessica.
So yes, everyone, I'm really happy to share Danone's experience through the SDG Action Manager, because we had the opportunity to beta test the tool, and I'm really happy to share with you our feedbacks and how we truly believe in the value that the tool is bringing for all kinds of organizations, from non-profit to companies. But just let me start with the context when it comes to the SDGs in Danone, because we firmly believe at Danone that the SDGs cannot be achieved without collaboration and co-creation. That's the basics of SDG 17. And we truly believe in the fact that business need to take a leadership role, and the SDG Action Manager is actually enabling business to do so. The other thing is that back in 2018, we have defined 9 goals as per 2030, and these company goals that we have defined are aligned now with the Sustainable Development Goals in order to reflect the interdependencies which is inherent to our economic system. And last but not least, but part of these 9 goals, we have one goal which is dedicated to the fact that we want to be certified as a B Corp, as a multinational, because we again truly believe that we believe in companies that are integrating stakeholder thinking at the heart of their business model, and that our business as a force for good. Having said that, now that we have tested the SDG Action Manager, I would like to focus on 5 main things that I think that are truly important for anyone who wants to start using the tool. The first one is that it is a tool which is actually business oriented. I saw from the results of the poll that a lot of you were interested in to what extent is the SDG Action Manager tool enabling companies through their business model to integrate SDGs. Well, the good news is that the SDG Action Manager enable actually company to get a clear view, as Dan showed you, a clear view on how operations, supply chain, your whole business model as a whole create positive impact, but also in order for companies to identify the risks and opportunities behind each SDG. The second thing that I wanted to emphasize on is when you're an organization, and especially when you're a company, and that you are committed to sustainability, you are assessed by a lot of organization. You have a lot of initiatives under which you can report when it comes to sustainability. And actually, the SDG Action Manager enable converging reporting frameworks because as it was well explained by Laura, through one and single tool, you can have the most of the B-Lab impact assessment, but also the 10 principles of the UN Global Compact, and obviously the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And we truly believe that convergence and harmonization is truly needed. The third idea that I wanted to emphasize on is the materiality approach that the SDG Action Manager is providing. Because when I remember of at Danone, when we started our journey towards the SDG, the first question we asked ourselves was, what are the SDGs that we need to take action on? Shall we consider all of them? Do we need to prioritize some of them? What is the most relevant according to our business model? And thanks to the SDG Action Manager, you have an identifications of the SDGs that matter most based on a company's profile. The fourth idea that I wanted to focus on is also the fact that the SDG Action Manager is enabling companies to adopt a universal language when it comes to sustainability through the SDGs. Because again, back in 2015, when we started our journey towards the SDGs, when we discovered the 17 SDGs, we realized that there were so many things behind each of them regarding the topics. For instance, when you think about SDG 2 for the first time, you may not know that you also need to tackle topics regarding to food safety, food security and safety, on access to nutrition, but also on promoting sustainable agriculture. And again, thanks to the library and the information that are available on the SDG Action Manager, you can get access to all the information behind each SDG. But on the fact that the SDG Action Manager is also helping organization to adopt a universal language, you also know that at your country level, each country has defined a roadmap as regards to the SDG. So by your organization, if you go through the SDG Action Manager, you can actually facilitate the dialogue that you can have with your authorities, your governments, the public organizations that you have in your own country, in order to explain how your organization is actually contributing to the voluntary national review regarding the SDGs. And last but not least, the tool is really easy to use, which I think is key when you're actually starting to use a new tool, because it's really collaborative also. You can make sure that a lot of experts within your organization can contribute to, and this is what we did during the beta testing with our expert on sustainable agriculture, but also for SDG 2, but also our expert on health and nutrition when it comes to reviewing SDG 3. So for me, it is also an important information to emphasize on. So as a conclusion, this is what I wanted to share with you today, because we truly believe that the SDG Action Manager is enabling businesses to take action on the Sustainable Development Goals for the 10 years that we have.
Thank you, Jessica, very much for your views on the tool. And so I would like to kick out the Q&A session. We have an enormous amount of questions, and very good ones that will help us cover all the topics that people are wanting to learn about. But I would like to start with a question specific to you, Jessica.
Okay.
I'm curious to know how a company like Danone, that has different layers, in terms of you have some things that are done and are decided at the corporate level, some others that are decided at divisional level, because you have different divisions, different products, and then you have different countries, different regions. How do you plan to apply this new tool? Are you going to answer the questions at a corporate level only? Would you like maybe to use it for one of your brands, like Activia, Actimel, or something like that, or for a specific country? Tell us more about that, please.
Actually, we are considering of using the SDG Action Manager at each level, because we think that it would be a pity not to use the advantage that the SDG Action Manager is offering, and not to broadcast it to at each layer, at each level of the company. So as you said, it is relevant at the corporate level, in order to make sure that a company has a global overview on its impact on all the SDGs. But from a division, a business activity per se, it's also interesting to have a more material approach to the SDGs. And from a subsidiary level, it is also interesting to have an overview much more related to the business model of the subsidiaries. And we also really think that at the brands level, it's really relevant in order for brands, in order to identify what we call their manifesto at Danone, their purpose, in order to actually take action as regards to their brand purpose.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jessica, for this answer. And now, so I will move on with the questions. And depending on the type of question, I will ask Dan or Jessica maybe to answer them. We will start with one very good question, which is, can you tell the action manager which SDGs you would like to focus on? Our materiality assessment includes mapping to the UN SDGs. So I will take this one. So in fact, no, you don't need to tell the action manager tool which of the SDGs you focus on. You just choose whichever you want. Even if, as Dan showed, there is a layer of suggested SDGs that you should be starting with because of the organization, because of your organization and your industry. In fact, this tool is for internal use. No one is going to look at your specific results. It is for you to play internally with the SDGs, and you can choose and pick whichever SDG you want. Imagine you are a manager in Danone, for instance, working specifically on gender equality or working specifically on water issues, and you want to learn more about those and see how your company can go further in that specific one. You can go to the tool and just focus on that SDG. There is no problem. You don't need to go in a specific order except for filling the baseline that is, as Dan explained, the one that unlocks all the rest of the SDGs. But after that, you can choose whichever SDG you want. In the case of the person that asked for this company, you can perfectly use your materiality assessment, which is very specific to your company. It is obviously much better than the approximation that we give in the tool. And based on that materiality analysis that you already have, pick and choose the SDGs from the tool that you would like to work on. So how many SDGs would you recommend to commit to? This is a tricky one because depending on the company, you might want to in order to make commitments. Depends on the degree of, I would say, the maturity of the company. I think that there are some kind of standard or some average that has been determined within B-Lab. Maybe Dan has some elements of answer to, some other elements of answer to this question.
Sure, I think largely agreed. When we've done some studies of what companies are interested in doing, we found that a majority of companies were interested in prioritizing between 1 and 5 sustainable development goals. But to Laura's point, I think that itself could vary for the particular circumstance. And I think Danone and Jessica might have something to add around Danone's, I think, a larger number than 5 in terms of where they see that relevance.
Yes, I think it goes back to the question of materiality. It's not so much a question of number, it's a question of making sure that you are actually having true impact. And obviously you cannot have the same level of impact for each SDG. So we have defined actually 3 levels at Danone when it comes to the SDGs. The first one on which we, as Danone, through our business model, we have direct impact on specific SDGs. The second level on which we are actually committed to, because we have specific commitments as regards to these particular SDGs. And the third level, which is our what we call contribution level, on which we can impact as any other company.
Great, thank you. I have now 2 a little bit technical questions that I would like Dan maybe to address. One is, how many members can be onboarded in a company through the features that you showed in the demo?
That's a good question. I'm actually not 100% sure. I know that there is a mechanism, and I could pull up the screen if we're interested, but it's at the bottom left-hand corner of a company's platform in which you can add team members. And to my knowledge, there actually isn't a limit to the number of team members that can be added. Although from a practical standpoint, what we see is it's normally a core group of individuals, usually divided to some degree by different functional areas because they bring in different expertise to the different types of questions that we're asking.
Great, makes total sense. Then, and I have another one, which is, can we have several accounts, meaning several companies? I think it's, the answer is obviously yes, but I don't know if Dan, you want to add something.
Yeah, I think it depends on the context of what that request is for. What we do know is there's some, whether it's in the platform on the whole for the SDG Action Manager or the B Impact Assessment, there are some companies who engage with these tools because it's a part of their consulting services, and what they're able to do is use within their accounts access to different companies to support them in their journey. And so the short answer to that is yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So then there is another question, which is, can I use it for a hypothetical company for teaching purposes? Absolutely, you're more than welcome to do that. The only thing is that when you identify yourself at the very beginning of the assessment, you will see that there are specific questions that will enable the technical team to then filter the different categories so that we can actually see results, aggregated results that are coming from actual companies. But obviously you can go create your account and use it for teaching purposes. In fact, we would be really very happy to see young people in universities using this tool to learn. So then there is a great question that I love being an accountant, which is, how do you verify the information reported and prevent greenwashing? This is a good one. In fact, in this tool, as I said before, this is a private tool. You can go to the web, you can access it. It is totally free. It is totally for you to access it. Once you are inside, no one else will see your specific results with the name of your company or your own name. This only will be used in a few months' time when we have enough information, because enough companies has joined. We will have aggregated results just for benchmarking purposes. But this tool is not, and I would like to stress this because I have seen a lot of questions regarding to this, and we will come to those. This is not a reporting tool. This is a continuous improvement tool based on a self-assessment. No one else will assess you based on the information that you put into the tool. Then, say in the same sense, are the inputs shared with any third party or accessible by external stakeholders? No. The short answer is no. We will only be using, at a certain point, we will be putting in place, also accessible to everyone, a benchmarking tool, a benchmarking capability of the tool that will only compare your company with a group of companies and aggregated results that you will not be able to see any names or any identification of the companies, just for your benchmark. Then, what is the resource and time commitment that a company will need to allocate to ensure the SDG Action Manager is properly implemented and maintained? This is, honestly, this depends on the objectives of the company using the SDG Action Manager. As I said before, if you are interested in a particular topic, you can just go and look at that specific topic. This is not what we encourage, because we would like companies to have a broader view of all their impacts on all the different SDGs. But if you want to just be focused on one or two SDGs, you're totally free to do that. So it is very difficult to answer to this question saying how many resources you should put in place. Also, companies that are very much mature on sustainability topics will find it very easy to go through it and to answer the questions. And those that are just starting will have at the beginning more difficulties, because it is the first time that they are actually looking at those topics. So So this will vary a lot in terms of what is the use of that you want to do from this resource, and also the level of maturity of the company. Another question: we are signatories to the UN Global Compact, but wanted to know if this platform can generate reports that satisfy the COP to renew UN Global Compact membership. That is an excellent question. We are now in a process of reviewing the COP, the Communication on Progress, for those who don't remember the name. It is, the COP is basically the reporting that each year a company annually has to do in order to maintain the membership at the UN Global Compact. And we are now actually reviewing the content of that COP. So we will be most probably launching a new COP with new content as from the beginning of next year. And absolutely, this work that we have done with B-Lab will be at the very basis of what we would like to introduce in the COP, namely to assess SDGs progress. So we don't, as of today, have a functionality to make automatically any kind of report that satisfies the COP requirements, but it is something that we might think of in the future. In terms of the content, at least it will be aligned. How does the score evaluation work with respect to positive and negative impact? I think that this is a question for Dan.
Sure, and I'll try to keep this clear and crisp and at a relatively high level, but it could get relatively technical pretty quick. The overarching idea is we wanted to make sure within the platform that both of these topics of potential hindering and negative impact on the SDGs and the opportunities to contribute were featured. However, what we didn't want to do is create an implication of the two being netted and completely overlapped. Admittedly, I think those two concepts are themselves actually quite interlinked, and so it's difficult to pull them out in their entirety. But within the scoring of each of the actual quantitative evaluations that a company received, you receive points earned based on the individual question, and that is based on the relative materiality and opportunity for impact that particular question is covering. And then on the risk level, that's intended to provide a measure of a company's, it's sort of like a backstop to those practices and quantitative outputs that are featured in the score to say what are the other things that a company needs to be aware of within their own business that could be indicative of potential negative impacts. And rather than a quantitative measure, because that could risk just being netted out with those other aspects, we offer a red, orange, yellow, green risk rating to keep the two separate.
Okay, thank you, Dan. So can non-profit organizations and non-business organizations use the tool? Yes, absolutely. This is applicable to those as well. As I said before, at the beginning of the assessment, you will have some ways of identifying the kind of organization that you are working for. Is this tool friendly for small companies? Absolutely. Absolutely. You have to remember that this tool has been based a lot on the assessment, the business impact assessment, which is done already for many years by B-Lab. And B-Lab is very well known for being very friendly for small companies. There are a lot of small companies that have been B Corp certified through that assessment. So yes, it is very much adapted to small companies as well.
And specifically, the question content itself is determined by the size of the business. And so for a company that is larger, they will see different questions and normally a higher number of questions to reflect their overall size and scale. Whereas for small to mid-sized businesses, they'll usually see a smaller, more targeted specific series of questions that are particularly relevant to them.
Great. So does the tool allow for regional consolidation of results? As we said before, this is not a reporting tool, so we don't have this functionality. There is no functionality that enables that. This is a very good one. Can one company assign another company to complete the assessment and also see the results? This is, we know that there are many tools out there to address questions that big companies specifically have from their suppliers and the supply chain. And but this is not a tool that is designed to be doing that. What is possible, of course, is to have a dialogue with those companies or with any stakeholder, any participant in your supply chain, and ask them to fill in the tool, but in a friendly manner, and sharing the data with them, and use it as I would say a checklist or something like that, and a tool for dialogue with them, but not the tool itself, technically speaking, does not support this functionality. Then, does this tool give a certificate, or is it just to measure yourself? This is a self-improvement or continuous improvement tool, so it is just for ourselves. There is no certificate of any sort allocated to this tool. Is the SDG Action Manager complementary of ESG reporting? Does it help to present annual report from companies? This is a very good question that we received many times. So particularly what I would say is that many of the topics, all the topics that are covered by the tool are very interesting and are obviously related to the SDGs, and many companies have a lot of appetite to start reporting on the SDGs if they have not done so before. So of course you are more than free to assess yourself and then to take those topics or those questions and showcase them in any kind of external reporting that you are doing. But this is not a specific tool for reporting purposes. Regarding if it is complementary to ESG reporting, I would say yes. There are a lot of companies that are reporting on ESG, and that next to that, and it is the case for Danone, for instance, next to that you have the link to whatever sustainability or ESG reporting you are doing, and the link or the mapping to the different SDGs. So because this tool is based on the SDGs, I think it is a good way of starting to do this mapping. It gives a lot of information about that. Will any results be visible to the public? Where are results stored? I think that this is a question for Dan.
Sorry, I was scanning other questions. Can you repeat the question?
Yes. Will my results be visible to the public? Yeah. Where are results stored? There are two questions.
Great. Yeah, and I think that's actually useful, because I think there's a number of questions here around data usage and things like that. And one thing at the highest level that I would encourage everyone to do is there are terms and conditions to the platform in which you're able to see the details that we have in place regarding data privacy and all of that. And essentially, the overarching summary is you have control over your data. And so it's not something that is automatically shared and identified with your company, with the exception of what Laura mentioned before, which is for the purposes of anonymous benchmarking within the user base. And that data is stored within B Lab's secure platforms. And there are more details that can be provided about the detail of how that is privately held. But again, the terms and conditions provide the greatest level of information about that.
Great. And I have another one for you, Dan. Can we export the results for further use in external systems?
Yeah, so the results right now in terms of individual data points are currently not able to be exported in its entirety. What will be able to be featured is the ability to export some of the summary reports of your performance. So you can, for instance, share that with your executive team or your board or something along those lines. Over time in the future, we envision the opportunity to develop mechanisms where this platform is actually linked to other platforms to enable more of that underlying data sharing, although that is not currently available.
Great. So I think there is another one for you. If a company is a B Corp, what are some of the benefits of completing the SDG Action Manager? What are the differences?
Yeah. So first of all, for the purposes of B Corp certification, that process is still managed by the other version of the assessment that sits within the same platform, which is the B Impact assessment. For someone who's interested in using both, and we think that they are quite complementary, someone's data on one is automatically used on the other. And so if you've already completed the B Impact assessment, you are completed through a portion of the SDG Action Manager. And vice versa, if someone's using the SDG Action Manager and chooses to become a B Corp in the future, their progress on the SDG Action Manager can be used for that process. The key differences are that B Impact assessment tool is a comprehensive measure of a company's entire organization across all stakeholders. And with that in mind, it's actually quite long and quite rigorous. It's over 200 questions, and it's designed to be completed in its entirety. At the same time, given how comprehensive it is, it means that it's not necessarily going quite as deep on any particular issue that the SDG Action Manager is doing. And so the key difference is, while the B Impact assessment is completely comprehensive, the SDG Action Manager enables a business, even if they're a B Corp, to actually go deeper and more focused on issues that are of particular relevance to them. Also, based on this module approach, it allows users to compartmentalize and complete only those things that are of most relevance to them and not necessarily complete the entire platform.
Great. Thank you, Dan. And I have a final question because we're running out of time. How many times a year do you think it's important to analyze performance? I would say, because of the practice that we usually do, that ideally you should be filling this in once a year to make an overall assessment. But also what I suggest, because this is, as I said before, is not for reporting, it's not for external reporting, no one is expecting this information, it is just for your internal use and management. So I would say that whenever you have a major decision or a new project that changes something related to some of the SDGs and the performance of your company on the SDGs, I would invite you to use it to reassess that specific topic. And also, obviously, following the explanation of Dan around the targets that you can, the goals that you can fix for the company during the year, sorry. You obviously need to interact with the tool because you can fix some goals in 3 months, in 6 months, and so forth. So, so I would think overall 1 year, but then you have a lot of interaction to do with the tool. So I think that there are a lot of questions that we didn't cover. We have another session that you can access. It will be taking place very soon. We will be posting this session through a link that will be in the page. I would like to thank you very much, you all, for being present today. I will like to, most of everything, to encourage you to use the tool, to give us feedback about the tool. There are specific places in the tool that you can do that in each of the questions, and we need that feedback because this is a living organism and we're going to improve it over time. And I would very especially like to thank B-Lab and specifically Dan for this presentation, as well as Jessica and the experience that she shared from Danone. Please don't forget that we have these 5 major functionalities of the tool. Now go get in the tool, create your accounts, and play with them. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.